Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to another video on the channel. So it's the early preview video for Game Week 8, and this is the weekly video I like to put out with a bit less charts and data, a bit more gut feel, and general discussion about FPL and the football that's going on. We're going to start by taking a look at our mini league, who is currently leading it, and who got Manager of the Week. Then I'll have a quick recap of my own team, discuss captaincy thoughts moving forward, as well as how my own team looks for Game Week 8. If you are new to the channel, please do subscribe, like the video. I really do appreciate it. I've got a small channel that's trying to grow, so any support really is welcome. Let's take a look at the mini league and the manager of the week. Shout out to Ricklian. He got 106 points, which is an absolute ton of points, really. Did have the bench boost active. Anytime you get 100 points in a game week, especially a single game week, doesn't really matter if you use a chip or not, it's a good week. Taking them inside the top 1 mil, well inside the top 1 mil, to about 760k, a game week rank of 5.8k, which is absolutely massive. Captain Haaland and obviously had Semenyo as well. Got some really good defensive returns. Van Hecker, that last minute goal, getting 11 points there. The Arsenal clean sheet. Tarkowski getting defensive contributions again, as well as a lot of points on his bench. Kudus coming in big with 12 points is a really good bench boost. Anytime you can get sort of 14, 16 points on your bench boost, that's awesome. As long as it's your actual players you would have put on your bench. We could all put Haaland on the bench saying, then talk about how great our bench boost was. But this is a pretty genuine bench, really, and it's an awesome score. So the overall leader is Peanut once again. So it wasn't the overall leader last week, has come back in and just overtaken Laurie. The top three is as tight as ever, 3 points separating them. Second and third are currently tied. And again, a really good game week. But there's certain players that you need to have in your team, it seems, in order to be doing well, or at least well in the game week just gone. Two of them being Semenyo and Haaland. Gabriel is also really useful, and both managers had Saka as well. He had Ndai, and even though João Pedro and Gyökeres blanked, some players are going to blank every week. It's not a surprise that players in your team you get about 3, 4 blanking each week, but you can still do well. Currently ranked at 130k in the world. What a fantastic rank to have! And let's see how the mini league can keep going. So on to my team, and I just missed out on being manager of the week in our mini league. So just 3 points shy of the best score. I got 103 points, which, stand by what I said before. Anytime you get about 100 points in a single game week is a pretty awesome score, and you can't be complaining too much. A game week rank of 11k, and it took me from 1.5 mil to about 335k, which is a huge rank increase and great going into the international break on a good green arrow. And it's put me in a really good position. Obviously, the rankings are so tight at the moment that could drop down extremely quickly. But in a game week which I felt was quite high scoring, the average score was 60 points. And I heard some people talking about how it's a good week to have a bad week. Not a lot of people scored well, but 60 points as the average for me is quite high. So to get 103 points and to get about 40 points above that is really good. So how did I do it? Well, in goal I had David Raya, which a clean sheet I will take. West Ham didn't really have any chances. David Raya didn't have to make a save in that game. So there was no save points there, no bonus points there, but defense really did pay off. So I went for five at the back, which we're talking about before game week 7 about how I was going to do that just with my squad. And I did have the triple Arsenal defense, and I was sweating on that clean sheet. They did make a huge swing in terms of my overall points. And whilst it's risky to have three defenders from the same team, and it is scary that one goal can cancel out basically your whole defense, with just one action. I think when Arsenal do keep clean sheets, it provides me with a really good foundation for a good score like this one. And Gvardiol got an assist and a clean sheet, and Tarkowski managed to get um, some defensive contributions as well. And going back to Gabriel, did also get 3 bonus points for a score of 12, and he was a really good differential pick for me. Senesi didn't get defensive contributions, which is ironic, really. The first time that he's not done that this season, and I do end up getting a really good score without that. into midfield, and of course had Semenyo like I've done every game week so far this season. And Bumo did get an attacking return, got an assist finally. Like we've been saying, the data has been showing he's been really underperforming his expected goal contributions so far this season. Hopefully, he can continue that, even with some difficult fixtures, which we'll talk about in a bit. And 12 points from Kudus was amazing. Now, I did bench Caicedo, and you're always going to look at your team and think, oh, what if I'd done this better? What if I'd put this player in? I could have done well. Even when you score 103 points, I'm there going, oh, if only I'd put Caicedo in instead of Reinders, would have got 7 more points. And, it's just a natural instinct. But I put Caicedo on the bench because whilst I thought he could get defensive contributions against Liverpool, I didn't expect him to score. And funnily enough, he did score and didn't get defensive contributions. So he got 10 points. But it doesn't make it a wrong decision. It just means that he, outperformed what I thought he would. It's still you can't be putting Caicedo in your team because you think he's going to get a goal. So the fact that he did score, I'm not really too bothered about. Up front, I just had Haaland and I did triple captain him. Was it the best outcome? Not really, especially when he scored after 9 minutes. I was thinking he is going to, get about three, four, maybe even five goals here against Brentford. He just had the one and got 2 bonus points. So I don't regret using the triple captain chip because you can really just use it in any week, especially in the first half of the season where you're almost guaranteed just single game weeks. I don't really see it being a problem. Of course, again, there's always improvements, right? There's a few players I could have triple captained above Haaland. You look at it and say, oh, what if I triple captained Semenyo instead of Haaland? But in another world, Semenyo might have blanked and Haaland, could have scored a few goals if you'd done that. And hindsight's great for that sort of thing. But anytime your triple captain just gets a return, I'll take it. They can blank quite often, and when you get 2 points just for 6 point triple captainer, that's when it's bad. So even if I just captained Haaland rather than triple captained, I would have ended up on 95 points. So the triple captainship didn't really have a massive impact on my good week. You look when last game week when people triple captained Haaland against Burnley, and it's a large portion of the points. Really, the triple captainship didn't have that much of an impact. So really happy with how the week went. Thinking of keeping my squad really for the foreseeable future. I don't really see anywhere that I need to make a transfer, but we'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a second. So, on to the early captaincy and the fixtures for this game week. And remember, it's the international break, so we've got a ton of time really just to assess and think about what we're going to be doing with our teams. The obvious players to captain kind of stand out as they usually do in each game week is Haaland and Salah. Now, would I be captaining Salah at home to Man United? Possibly, because historically he's got a good record against Man United, and I think being Liverpool at home on the Sunday kickoff, he's a good option. But I don't really see why you would need to go against Haaland, really. If you own Haaland, right? If you don't own him, then I would definitely captain Salah. But if you do own Haaland, you just got to go with him at the moment, depending on how the international break goes, whether he picks many injuries there. But he is just on such good form and playing really well generally, doing a lot of good defensive work. So we don't need to discuss the captaincy too much right now. I think it's between two players and it depends on which one you own. If you own both, you go for Haaland. So onto my team for this week, and I don't really need to do too much. At the moment, we'll see how the international break goes, but David Raya is performing really well. Is he going to keep a clean sheet every week? No, but the next few fixtures, at least the next four or five, look really good from a defensive point of view. Fulham are scoring a load of goals. Then he got Palace at home. At least it's not Palace. And then Burnley and Sunderland. I think are good defensive games. Into defence for this next game week, I'm going to stick with the Arsenal triple up. I think because I've put a lot of money in there, I do think it's worth playing more often than not. When they have difficult fixtures, I probably would bench Calafiori, but it depends on who Tarkowski and Senesi are playing. Because Senesi and Tarkowski both have away games this game week, I think it makes sense to play both Arsenal defenders, and Guardiola is the home defender. It is difficult, I find, for Man City to keep clean sheets in general. So he is someone that I'm looking at moving out in the near future. Those Liverpool and Newcastle games, I don't see him getting clean sheets there. Even Bournemouth at home and Villa away, they're not great games. So this might be the last week I have Guardiola. And because I've got three free transfers and probably I'll have four by the time game week 9 rolls around, can quite easily move Guardiola down to someone a lot cheaper and just get a bit more money in the bank. And then even if I play a three back or a four back, my four defenders will be the two Arsenal players, and Senesi and Tarkowski, which looks pretty strong. Now into midfield, again, I don't really see any emergency to try and remove any players here. I am going to bench Mbumo as it stands. Just the Liverpool away doesn't look the most appealing, even though Liverpool haven't been playing that well recently. An international break can provide a bit of a reset for teams, and those teams that aren't performing as well just sort of have a break and then come back, and they're just back to normal. So if I was to start Mbumo, I would bench Reinders, I think, with Everton at home. I just think Reinders, he can score. He definitely had chances at the weekend against Brentford. He had a header that was saved. But overall, I've really only just got him in because he's quite highly owned and a bit of a safety pick when I was on the wild card. I am going to start Caicedo this week. I don't anticipate him scoring a goal, but an attacking return isn't out of the question, mainly because Nottingham Forest, they're just not playing very well, or they're playing very well and the results aren't getting there. But I think from a defensive point of view, Caicedo can really get some good defensive contributions against a team like Nottingham Forest, who will come out and attack. And then I'm going to stick with Semenyo and Kudus. So if I was going to swap anyone around at the moment, it would be Mbumo and Reinders. But let me know what you think if you've got a difference of opinion as well. Reinders is another player, a bit like Gvardiol, that I am thinking of potentially transferring out. Maybe I can sell Gvardiol to a cheaper defender and then upgrade Reinders. I don't really need to force the issue with that. I think when it comes naturally in game week 9, I'll take another look at it. So up front, I am starting all three forwards this week, or at least planning to as it stands. I think the Nottingham Forest game is a great fixture for João Pedro. He's not on international duty, and there's no reason why you would sell him at the moment. The Crystal Palace fixture for Evan Nielsen, in the other hand, is quite a difficult fixture, I think, for Bournemouth. Palace is always a tough place to go, and I know they've just lost, but it's still only one loss in, I think, 19 games for them. Evan Nielsen hasn't been hitting the back of the net with any regularity, so he is someone that could drop to the bench as well, but I think he's got the capability of getting a goal against Crystal Palace. And then I'm captaining Haaland with Everton at home. There's just no need to overcomplicate this. Haaland is the best player in FPL right now, even if he's probably still not worth the massive price point. The lack of high priced options and alternative players in FPL just aren't there right now, so you've got the money to spend. So overall, my team value is 101.2 million with zero point 0.3 in the bank. Having that, 101.5 million total is probably the highest value team I've ever had for 7 game weeks in FPL, and I've not really had to make too many changes other than on the wild card, which I think was at a good time. The strengths for me are the Arsenal defence. Again, it is scary that they could just concede a goal and wipe out all your clean sheets, but think even if you were to spread the players around, not many teams are keeping clean sheets anyway. So you can be sort of second guessing which players you could have, pick and mix from different squads, and none of them keep a clean sheet regardless. At least I've got three in from potentially the best defense in FPL. I've also got some good popular players, which means that now I've got a rank which is a really good rank, to be fair, about 300k in the world at the moment. I'm hopefully unlikely to make any sharp declines because I've got these players like Reinders and Semenyo, Haaland, Pedro, who are quite highly owned. That even though everyone's got them, nobody who owns them is going to be overtaking me with their points. And I think the fact that I've got some differentials mixed in, like Calafiori, Gvardiol, Evan Nielsen, even Caicedo, Mbumo is really good. Like they're the ones that I think are going to keep me, overtaking the people in front. So the weaknesses are benching headaches. Again, both weeks I've had Gabriel on the bench. This week I've had Caicedo on the bench, who have scored more points than the players that have started for me. And that is an issue in some respects because you can't predict the future, and I'm not going to get it right all the time. So I am coming to terms with being, not frustrated, but having those points on my bench and thinking, "Oh, why didn't I start those players?" And just before the deadline, being comfortable and confident with my decisions and thinking, well, even if they do perform at the time of the deadline, did I think it was the right decision to make? And the answer is yes, because that's why I made it. And therefore, it's a lot easier to come to terms with when you've got points on your bench. And another potential weakness is Reinders. I did struggle for another weakness in this team at the moment. I think it looks really strong. But if there was one, it is Reinders underperforming. But as I've discussed earlier, him and Guardiol have the potential to be moved out of my team. I'm not in a rush. I'm happy to build up at least four, maybe even five free transfers and take it from there. So hopefully you had a good game week. Let me know how many points you got. If you've made it to this far in the video, let me know how you're going with your team. If you've got any questions that you want to ask, always great to have discussions. Go check out my latest wildcard video as well. Link will be on the screen right about now, and I will see you in the next one.